Okay, lesson for the day is car clear coat or clear coat on car paint. What is it? Why do you care? How do you tell? I'm going to start with the basics and work our way down the rabbit hole so you can tune in for as long as you care to learn something. So let's get started because I have a perfect example sitting here in my home, garage, business, whatever you want to call it. Okay, sitting in my garage here is a Mercedes-Benz C280. It is actually it's a 2000 model. And if we zoom in, we can see just how bad the clear coat on this car is. This is what is called clear coat failure at a colossal level. Okay, and this is what, as I pull this off the tripod, this is what got me thinking. It's like, okay, I've got to start creating videos that start with the basics, whether it's the do-it-yourselfers or the wannabe detailers. So we can literally see clear coat is just that. It is a clear coating that they put on the car itself. This is how it's finished. What has happened here is the clear coat has failed. And now what's left, and this is dirty paint, and because this car is so trashed, I don't care about scratching the paint as I rub the dirt off of it. So don't go into freak out mode on me, okay, all you zealots. I want to just highlight that this is extreme failure of clear coat. Can this be fixed? No, it cannot. You would literally have to sand this off completely and reshoot it. Now, whether you can reshoot clear straight over the base coat or not, that's a whole nother discussion, and as far as the detailer's world, that's mostly irrelevant. You would have to consult the body shop because I've heard different opinions. So, clear coat, as a rule, especially with cars that are made today, every car will come with what's called a two-stage paint job. So you have the base coat, which is the color coat, and then you have the clear coat, hence the term two-stage. Probably more appropriately, it should be called two-layered paint, but it's not. It's called two-stage. Okay, if you were to go far enough back in time, let's say 15 to 20 years ago, and prior to that, cars are painted in what's called a single stage paint job, which essentially just means there was no clear coat on top of it. You had enamels, you had acrylic enamels, you had lacquers, you had different types of paint, but that's different. Now every car is coated in a clear protective coating called a clear coat. And I say protective because that's why they started adding clear coat on the paint itself. It is a layer of UV protection that filters out a certain amounts or certain levels of ultraviolet light waves, radiation, call it whatever you want, from the sun. It is there to protect the paint. So if you were to rewind, let's say 5-10 years ago, this is where the industry started responding. And when I say the industry, what I mean is car care products or companies. So if you have been in the world long enough, as in the car care world or the detailing world, you would have seen where they started labeling products as clear coat safe. Well, as it transitioned from single stage paint into clear coat, at a level that was kind of relevant. But ultimately, it's one of those areas where manufacturers preyed upon people's ignorance to sell you more product. For example, you're Johnny customer, Johnny car owner, Johnny, I don't have enough experience as a detailer to know the difference. So you're standing there in Pep Boys or Walmart or wherever, and you're trying to pick out a polish or a wax or whatever. And one label, brand A, says, will protect your car's paint for up to 6 months, easy to use, brilliant shine, whatever. Now, brand B says all that, but then it says clear coat safe. Okay, now because you're ignorant and you don't know the difference, you stand there and think, clear coat? What's clear coat? Wow, I've never even heard of clear coat. But wait a minute, I think I heard of clear coat one time. My buddy at a party mentioned cars and clear coat. And now this brand doesn't say anything about clear coat, but this brand does. But because I'm so ignorant and I don't know, guess which product gets grabbed off the shelf and purchased by Johnny Consumer? Yes, the brand that says Clear Coat Save. So what they've done is they have added an element of fear, because what they're doing is they're preying upon your ignorance. And that was a way that those companies back in the day used to sell products. Well, now as time goes forward and virtually it's accepted within the world of detailing and car care that basically every car will come from the factory with a clear coat on it, a two-stage paint. So no longer does that little game work for the what's becoming the educated consumer car owner. So I find that less and less. But if you go on the forums, they'll still talk about endlessly about, oh, this clear coat's softer or this one's harder or whatever, and they'll debate the nuances, and everyone wants to be the resident expert in the moment. Anyhow, that part is true. But like everything else in the world, nothing is created equal. Even if you have a car like this Mercedes, which I showed you that we have complete clear coat failure on, manufacturers will change vendors or the places they source their parts, their paint, whatever, from different manufacturers. And it can change at any given time because we don't have control over it as consumers. They have control over it, and because they're operating a business, which means that they have to produce a profit for the shareholders or stockholders, that's what they're driven for. So, point is not all clear coats are created equal. Not all clear coats are sprayed in the same thickness. And there's yet another area. It's like, how far down the wormhole do you want to go? Well, there's so many areas of car care, and every industry has this. You can dissect it, and you can dissect every area of that world. So for cars and detailing, it can be the paint, it can be the materials inside, it can be leather, it can be tires, it can be the products, the tools. Everything is endless debate. And unfortunately, as a rule, we as people, we tend to oversimplify the things that really are more complex. And therefore, we are not truly informed consumers or car owners because we have oversimplified it, the industry has oversimplified it, and they prey upon our ignorance. But then the reverse is true, because then we complicate things that can be simplified. So we actually have it in reverse, or things have been turned on its head. So that's one of my kind of truisms, but that's a Darren truism. Doesn't mean it's true for you, it's just that in my experience, that's what I found. So clear coats, virtually every car will have them. You would have to go back a minimum of 10 years, but more like 15 to 20 years to even find a car that does have a single stage paint. And most likely it will be white in color. And the last cars I remember that I worked on professionally that had a single stage paint was a Toyota truck that was white, a Honda, I think it was a Honda Accord that was white, and I think those were a 1990s model. Anyhow, point is nowadays every car's gonna have a clear coat. So there's a way to test to see if your car has a clear coat. So for example, let's say you have a car that's approximately 15 to 20 years old and you're not sure, and honestly, in a lot of ways it doesn't really matter, because the same polishes that can be used on a single stage paint can be used on a clear coat and vice versa. Because why? Because it's ultimately going to be a case by case, and that's where experience comes in, where because nothing is created equal, me as a professional or you as a beginner, you have to test. It's like, okay, I've got products that I know basically will work on any type of paint. What is under my control is what type of buffer I use, what type of buffer pads, how much pressure, how much speed, how long do I allow the buffer to remain on the paint, what is the beginning starting point, what is my end goal. Am I doing paint correction, paint enhancement? All those things have to come into play, and ultimately it's kind of irrelevant as to whether it's a single stage or a two-stage paint, because you still have to respond based on the information of the situation, which is all those things I just got done listing. So if you are curious and you want to know how do you test, well, that's where you can take some kind of polish. And by polish, I mean something with abrasives in it. It could be something as simple as toothpaste, and I mean the white type of toothpaste that has a little bit of grit to it. And you can rub it with a rag. So for example, I have some Meguiar's Scratch X 2.0. Wow, that's cool. It's 2.0 as in like the world of the internet and technology, which means it must be better than just Scratch X, because now it's Scratch X 2.0. I suppose next Meguiar's will have a Scratch X 3.0, right? Yes, sarcasm. So I put a little dab, and this is for fine scratch and blemish remover. Okay, so it's got a little bit of grit, and through experience I know that there's very, very little grit. This is what would be called a very mild abrasive, a very mild polish. So if you wanted to test your car to see if, and like I said, this car is trashed, I don't care about wiping the dust, you would take a little bit of polish and you would rub aggressively, and if it came up clear as it does on this microfiber versus a color, so let's say this was not clear coated. Now I don't even know if I'll be able to do it because I know the clear coat is missing here, so let's just do a little example and let's see if I can get some color to come up on this area that I know the clear coat is now missing. Ha! See that? It did work. Why? Because I already know how it works. This is now unclear coated base coat. So this is the color coat that we are dealing with. Therefore, that is why when I used some abrasives on it, it actually pulled up some of the paint. But when I did it over here, because the clear coat is still intact, it did not pull up any color. So that's just a little test that you can do if for some reason you wanted to know. But I'm not going to get into polishing and all that BS of the endless debate of clear coats and how thick and blah blah blah. So, clear coat thickness. This is where professional detailers, and this is where they like to add a lot of hype, all you professional detailers that may be watching this, and chances are if you really know what you're doing, you've already checked out, because this is stuff you already know this stuff. But if you visit the car forums that are so nauseating, full of people that probably shouldn't be giving opinions, and don't take that personal. I'm sure it's not you. I'm sure it's the other guy over there that's applying the nauseating comments on the forums and so forth. And it's interesting that when I talk to professionals that have literally been in the industry 10, 15, 20 plus years, you know what the theme is? Every one of them are disgusted with the forums because it's full of so much crap. And that's what's frustrating for newbies, is you don't know what's crap and what's not crap. And it doesn't mean everything's crap. It's just, it means that a lot of people, like how do you filter out the crap? Or how do you filter out someone's comment or posting that may have partial crap in it, but it's not all crap? You don't have the experience to do it. But a guy with lots of experience can look at it instantly and say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Or this guy's taking it out of context. Or this guy is speaking from limited experience. Or this guy says he operates a professional detailing business, but you know he's not speaking from any real experience. Otherwise, he wouldn't be saying what he's saying. So that's the problem today, is we're on information overload. So how thick is clear coat? Yes, you can measure it. Is that important? Well, yes, it can be important if you're wet sanding, color sanding, call it what you want, polishing, doing serious paint correction. But for beginners, it's going to be mostly irrelevant. I dare anyone to tell me how thick the clear coat is from a manufacturer. Meaning, will the manufacturer actually tell you how thick that clear coat is? They will never tell you. You know why? Because they don't want you to know. You know why they don't want you to know? Because depending upon how thick that clear coat is and the type of manufacturer that they're buying the material from will determine if we have failure, like on this Mercedes, okay? And virtually every car, every manufacturer has their problem child, which means based on the year, the color, wherever, you'll notice that, for example, like on this Mercedes, why is it the trunk and the roof and the hood only failed? Why not this edge here? I don't know. Is it different? I have no idea. You know why? Because I'm not at the factory watching them spray it. Yes, it absorbs more UV radiation, but so does this adjoining panel, and yet that doesn't fail. But you'll see cars, like on some of the other cars, I'll see literally just the roof clear coat fail, but the rest of the car is fine. And you think, well, if the trunk and the hood, is that the right word? The trunk and the engine, yeah, the hood, duh. If they're exposed to the same levels of UV lighting that the roof is, how come they haven't failed? I don't know. Once again, we can only control so much, and we just don't know the answers, even as professionals. So clear coat, every car has it. Any product can be safe, meaning if you're looking at labels and it says clear coat safe, just disregard that. They're all safe, meaning I can take any product and make it unsafe. I can take virtually any product and make it safe. It's all based on the person behind the product. It's kind of like the gun debate. Guns don't kill. The person behind the gun is what kills. So I can take a gun and make it useful in shooting targets, or I can make it deadly and shoot somebody. Or I can be safer about it and shoot somebody in the foot versus shooting them in the head, which would be deadly, generally speaking. So it's the same thing with products. They can be safe and unsafe based on how you use them. That's where experience comes in. That's where product knowledge comes in. That's also where a lot of endless chatter comes in, and just this nauseating debate about, oh, I would never use that polish on that car because they have soft paint, or they have soft clear coat and you have to be extra special and blah blah blah. Well, okay, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Well, guess what? They can change the paint manufacturer halfway during a model line. So even though it's an identical car, identical color, identical year, doesn't mean it's still the same animal. The manufacturer could have changed sources during the year, and now the one car's painted with a softer clear coat versus the other car that's painted with a harder clear coat. So it just gets frustrating. So don't take it personal if you're taking offense to this. And chances are, if you're offended by it, you probably shouldn't be tuned into my channel anyways, because I'm just going to call it like it is. I'm speaking from experience. Doesn't mean I know everything by any means, but I know a fair amount because I've been doing it for like 25 years. So I'm just trying to apply a more realistic perspective of the industry, and I'm trying to start with the basics. So I saw a moment. Once again, it's completely unscripted. I know I haven't covered everything without clear coat, so feel free to send your questions or post your questions. I'll do my best to answer them. I'm very, very busy. Okay, so here's the rules for clear coat to simplify it. If there's some kind of confusion between clear coats or non-clear coated cars. So the fact is, any car made in the 10 years, you can just about guarantee it's got a clear coat on it. So there's the rule number one. Second rule is the clear coats are basically a type of plastic. Yes, believe it or not, a type of plastic. Now, there's a term that is so misused because plastic, like rubber, can come in endless configurations. But yes, there's chemicals within the clear coat that could, you very realistically can put it under the classification of plastic. You know why I know this partially? A is I've asked chemists and formulators that are actually in the industry making products, and B, you know how they have non-staining wax formulations that can be used right over plastic trim and so forth? Well, guess what? It's just a different type of plastic. So that's another rule. Third, they clear-coated cars, which we've already concluded is virtually every car. Same basic rules of care and maintenance are required. Washing, waxing, they'll still get what's called industrial fallout, which is just a glorified name for pollution. There's pollution in the air everywhere. It floats around, you breathe it, it lands on your car, it starts embedding itself into your paint or your clear coat, and so you will still have to use detailing clay or the clay bar or the surface preparation cloths that they now have, something to remove it. They'll still be prone to showing spider webbing, swirl marks. Everything that's always existed in the past is still going to exist with clear coats. The difference is that when they fail or as they oxidize completely different than single stage paint jobs. Generally, clear coats don't really oxidize as in what people have been led to believe, or what we have grown up to understand about car paint, which is that as paint oxidizes, it tends to fade, discolor, turn chalky, that type of stuff. Clear coats don't do that. They just take on this appearance where they look like they've been washed with like steel wool or a scrub pad, where they're all scratched up, and the official term is called spider webbing, because if you look at it in the light, it looks like endless spider webs have just been laid out over the car, and what it is just ultra fine scratches that are picking up the reflection of the sun's lighting, and they create a swirl pattern because the sunlight or the sun is round, and so as you move and transition, it constantly creates a swirl looking effect or a circular effect regardless of how you're viewing it, okay? So it'll just get worse and worse and worse, and that's where polishing comes in, where it can be removed or diminished, so on and so forth. Past that, you have the example I used at the beginning of this video, which is complete failure, where the clear coat will begin to blister and bubble and peel off. That is the point of no return. It cannot be saved. At best, you might be able to feather the edges, but you can't restore it, you can't save it. That ship has sailed, baby. So that's why I want to use this extreme situation here, because you can, as I showed you at the beginning, that clear coat literally is a clear layer that is different than the base coat, and it is a form of plastic. So there's the basic rules. They still need the same basic care as regular car paint, but today's regular is the new normal, which is clear. All cars are clear coated. I wish I had more time to make more videos and answer your questions on an individual basis. As a rule, always look in the description box. There's going to be some kind of link there to one of my websites. It might be just to the home page. It could be to a very specific page, whatever. But in the description box, and whether it's my channel or someone else's channel, the description box is usually a good place to start. So, till next time.